Lena stood in the quiet corridor outside the royal nursery, her palms damp and her breath shallow. The palace of Zareth hummed around her, a low musical vibration that came from the living stone walls and the glowing vines that curled along every archway. She had been on this moon for 6 weeks. Ever since her small research shuttle, the Aurora Bloom, had been torn apart by a solar flare near the edge of known space. The Zenthari had found her drifting in an escape pod, half frozen and barely conscious. They had saved her. Now they watched her, not with suspicion but with curiosity, as if she were a rare flower that might bloom or wilt without warning. She wore simple robes given to her by the palace staff. Soft, silver-gray fabric that adjusted to her body temperature. Her dark hair was tied back, her face clean, her hands steady despite the storm inside her chest. She had been summoned an hour ago by a silent attendant with eyes like polished obsidian. No explanation, only a gesture toward the inner wing. And now here she was outside the nursery, where the Queen's newborn had not slept a full cycle since birth. Queen Vela had not spoken to her directly until today. The ruler of the Zenthari was legendary across 3 galaxies. Tall, radiant, feared in battle, revered in peace. Her people believed she carried the voice of the first star in her throat, and now that voice had called for Lena. The heavy door slid open without sound. Inside, the room glowed with soft amber light. Floating orbs drifted near the ceiling, pulsing gently like slow heartbeats. In the center, on a cradle woven from living crystal, lay Princess Kayla. She was tiny, barely the size of Lena's forearm, her skin a pale lavender, her limbs delicate as spun glass. But her cries, those were anything but fragile. They rang through the chamber like shattering glass, sharp and endless. Queen Vela stood beside the cradle, her back straight, her violet skin dimmed with exhaustion. Her usual radiance was dulled, her star-bright eyes shadowed. When she turned and saw Lena, she did not smile. She simply nodded. "They say you hum to the sky lilies," the Queen said. Her voice was lower than Lena remembered, roughened by sleepless nights. "That the young ones curl toward your voice," Lena swallowed. I didn't think anyone noticed." "We notice everything," Vela replied, "especially now." She stepped aside and gestured to the cradle. "My daughter will not be soothed. Not by chant, not by scent, not by the old songs of our ancestors. Healers say her spirit is restless, that she seeks a sound not of our world." Lena's stomach dropped. "You think? A human sound?" "I think," the Queen said slowly, "that you are the only one who has not tried to fix her. You simply care for what grows. Perhaps that is what she needs." Before Lena could protest, an attendant lifted the crying infant and placed her gently into Lena's arms. The moment the baby touched her skin, her wails sharpened. Lena flinched but held on. The weight was so light, yet it felt like holding a storm. She looked down at the tiny face twisted in distress, those golden eyes squeezed shut, tears like liquid pearl tracing down her cheeks. Lena's chest ached. She thought of her grandmother back on Earth, how she used to rock her during thunderstorms, humming that old lullaby about the river and the moon. Without thinking, Lena began to hum. It was soft at first, barely more than breath. The melody was simple, just 5 notes repeated. She swayed gently, shifting the baby against her chest, letting her feel the steady thump of a human heart. She stroked the baby's back with one finger, careful not to press too hard. For a long moment, nothing changed. The cries continued. Queen Vela's expression grew tight. Lena's hope began to fade. Then, a shift. Princess Kayla's cries hitched. Her tiny body went still for a heartbeat. Then another. Her eyes opened, wide, golden, searching. She stared up at Lena as if seeing her for the first time. The wailing stopped. In its place came a soft, questioning coo like a bell ringing underwater. Lena held her breath. The baby blinked, then slowly. She reached up and touched Lena's chin with a trembling finger. A warm light bloomed from her palm, spreading across Lena's skin like sunlight through water. A deep calm settled over her, washing away fear, doubt, even time itself. Queen Vela made a sound, half gasp, half sob. She stepped forward, her hands trembling. "She's quiet," she whispered. Truly quiet. Lena looked at her, tears in her own eyes. She just needed to feel safe. "No one has held her like that," Vela said. "We tried to soothe her with power, with ritual, but you offered presence." Lena didn't know what to say. She only knew that the baby was now gazing at her with something like trust. And that feeling, that tiny spark of connection, meant more than any rescue, any honor, any reward. Queen Vela studied her for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice clear and strong again. Among my people, a bond formed in the nursery is sacred. Deeper than blood, stronger than oath. I made a promise before the High Council. If anyone could calm my daughter's spirit, I would offer them my hand in union. Not as a prize, but as a partnership. Lena's breath caught. You can't mean... I do, Vela said. You have done what our greatest minds could not. You saw her not as a problem to solve, but as a soul to meet. That is the heart of a true ruler. Lena looked down at Princess Kayla, who was now drifting into sleep, her tiny fingers curled around Lena's thumb. She thought of Earth. The quiet labs, the empty apartment, the years of feeling invisible. And here, on a moon orbiting a star she'd never heard of, she had calmed a royal air with a lullaby her grandmother taught her. I'm just a botanist, Lena said softly. I don't know your laws, your customs. You know kindness, Vela replied. And that is the oldest law of all. Lena didn't say yes right away. She asked questions about the union, about her role, about what it would mean for Kayla. Vela answered each one with patience, her eyes never leaving Lena's face. She spoke of shared rule, of councils and star maps, but also of quiet evenings, of teaching Kayla both Zenthari chants and Earth songs. By the time the twin moons rose outside the nursery window, painting the floor in silver stripes, Lena had made her choice. I'll stay, she said. Not just for her, she nodded at the sleeping baby, but for you, if you'll have me. Queen Vela's smile was like dawn breaking over a dark world. She reached out and took Lena's free hand. I have wanted you since the moment you hummed to my daughter, she said. Not because you succeeded, but because you tried without expecting anything in return. That night, Lena did not return to her guest chamber. She was given new quarters, adjacent to the Queen's, with a view of the singing gardens and a cradle that glowed softly in the corner. As she lay in the wide, warm bed, listening to the distant chime of the palace crystals, she felt something she hadn't felt in years, peace. And when Queen Vela entered quietly, sitting beside her to watch over Kayla together, Lena didn't feel fear or strangeness. She felt like she had finally come home, not to a place but to a purpose. The stars outside burned bright, but inside, something even brighter had begun to grow. The peace on Zareth did not last. It never does when power shifts. Lena had begun to feel settled, waking each morning to the soft chime of the nursery crystals, sharing meals with Vela in the sunlit atrium, teaching Kayla the names of earth flowers through gentle touch and song. But whispers returned, sharper this time, carried not by courtiers but by emissaries from the outer systems. They spoke of unrest, of old houses questioning the Queen's choice, of a growing belief that a human, fragile, short-lived, untested in war, had no place beside the throne. Vela dismissed the rumors at first. They will see your worth, she told Lena one evening as they walked the moonlit gardens. They always do. But Lena saw the tension in Vela's shoulders, the way her eyes lingered on security reports longer than usual. She also noticed the new guard stationed near the nursery, silent, armored, their faces unreadable behind polished masks. Then came the challenge. It arrived not with weapons, but with words. Lord Torvak, head of the Iron Blood clan and a veteran of the Dravik Wars, requested a formal audience. He stood in the Great Hall, his frame broad and scarred, his voice like grinding stone. He did not bow. Queen Vela, he began, you have brought honor to our people, but your bond with the off-worlder weakens our standing. The Alliance watches. They see a ruler guided by sentiment, not strength. I invoke the right of balance. A hush fell over the court. Even the crystals dimmed. Lena did not know what the right of balance was, but the way Vela's jaw tightened told her everything. Later in private, Vela explained. It is an ancient trial, not of combat, but of worth. Torvak believes you are unfit to stand as my equal, so he demands you prove your value through service, not to me, but to the people. What must I do? Lena asked. You must go to the ash wastes, Vela said, her voice heavy. A region poisoned centuries ago in the Great War. Nothing grows there. The air burns. The few who live there are outcasts, forgotten. Your task is to restore life. If you succeed within one moon cycle, Torvak will withdraw his challenge. If you fail, the council may force me to dissolve our bond. Lena's heart sank. The ash wastes were considered a death sentence. Even Zenthari, with their resilient biology, avoided the place. And she, Human, soft-skinned, breathing oxygen like a luxury would not last a day. Yet she did not hesitate. "I'll go." Vela reached for her hand. "You do not have to." "Yes, I do," Lena said softly. "Not for them. For us. For Kayla. I won't let fear decide our future." Preparations were swift. Scientists fitted her with a sealed environmental suit lined with biofilters. Engineers gave her a portable terraformer, small but powerful. Botanists packed seeds, Xanthari sky lilies, earth mosses, even a single cutting from the palace's oldest vine. And Vela gave her something no one else could. A locket containing a drop of Kayla's light and a strand of her own hair, woven together. "So you carry our hearts with you," she whispered. The journey to the ash wastes took 2 days. The land was exactly as described, gray, cracked, lifeless. The sky hung low and yellow, the air thick with toxic dust. Even through her filters, Lena could taste bitterness. The few huts she found were empty, their doors hanging open like broken teeth. She set up camp near a dried riverbed, activated the terraformer, and began to work. She tested the soil. It was dead. No microbes, no nutrients, only ash and metal residue. The terraformer could cleanse it, but slowly, too slowly for one moon cycle. Despair threatened to swallow her. She sat in the dust, staring at her gloved hands. Then she remembered something her grandmother used to say. "Life finds a way, child. You just have to give it a door." She opened her seed pack. Most would not survive. But the moss, earth moss, was stubborn. It grew on rocks, on roofs, and cracks where nothing else dared. She mixed it with the sky lily spores and the vine cutting, then added something else. Her own sweat, her breath, the warmth of her body. She pressed the mixture into the cleansed soil and sang. Not a lullaby this time, but a planting song, one her grandmother sang while tending the garden. Simple, steady, full of hope. Days passed. The terraformer hummed. The wind howled. Lena worked, sang, slept little. On the 5th day, a miracle. A tiny green shoot pushed through the gray. Then another. The moss spread like a whisper, followed by the silver tendrils of the sky lily. The vine curled around a broken stone, blooming with pale blue flowers that glowed faintly in the dusk. Word spread. First, a child appeared at the edge of the camp, thin, wide-eyed, wrapped in rags. Lena offered food, water, and a song. The child stayed. Then others came, families, elders, the forgotten. They watched her work. They listened to her sing. And slowly they began to help. They brought buckets of filtered water. They cleared debris. They planted seeds with trembling hands. Lena taught them how to mix soil, how to shield young shoots from the wind, how to listen to the land. In return, they taught her their stories, of loss, of exile, of waiting for someone to care. By the 3rd week, the camp was no longer a camp, but a village. Green stretched across the wastes like a healing scar. Flowers bloomed where only ash had been, and at the center stood Lena, her suit stained, her voice hoarse, her heart full. On the final day, Lord Torvak arrived. He came not with guards, but alone. He walked through the new fields, touched the leaves, knelt beside a blooming lily. His face, once hard as iron, softened. He found Lena by the riverbed, now trickling with clean water. "You did not just grow plants," he said. "You grew hope." Lena looked at him. "I just gave them a reason to believe again." Torvak bowed. Not the shallow dip of court, but a deep, full bow of respect. "The rite is complete. You have proven your worth not through power, but through patience. The Iron Blood clan will stand with you." When Lena returned to Xerath, the city welcomed her not as a stranger, but as a hero. Crowds lined the sky bridges, throwing petals of silver and green. The council stood at the palace gates, their faces open, their doubt gone. Vela waited in the nursery, Kayla in her arms. The moment Lena entered, the baby reached for her with a joyful cry. Vela's eyes shone with tears. "You came back," she said. "I told you I would," Lena replied, stepping into her embrace. That night, the palace held a feast. Not for victory, but for renewal. Songs were sung in 2 tongues. Dishes blended earth spices with Xanthari nectar. And at the high table, Lena sat not as an outsider, but as light mother, as partner, as queen in truth. Later, as they stood on the balcony watching the twin moons rise, Vela leaned her head on Lena's shoulder. "They will never doubt you again," Lena smiled. "I don't need them to believe in me. I just needed to believe in us." Below, in the gardens, the new flowers glowed softly, their light spreading like a promise across the moon of Xerath. and somewhere in the stars a human lullaby echoed not as a whisper but as a legacy. Weeks passed like slow tides on Zareth, each day weaving Lena deeper into the life of the palace. She no longer walked the halls as a guest but as someone who belonged. The attendants bowed not out of duty but respect. The sky lilies in the garden turned their faces toward her as she passed, their petals shimmering in response to her hum. And every evening, without fail, she sat beside Princess Kayla's cradle, singing the same earth lullaby that had first quieted the infant storm. Queen Vela kept her promise. The union ceremony was not grand or public as Lena had feared, but intimate. A private vow spoken beneath the twin moons in the heart of the singing grove. Only a few elders witnessed it, their eyes gleaming with approval. There were no rings, no documents, only the joining of hands and the exchange of breath. A Zenthari tradition that meant their lives would now share the same rhythm. After that night, Lena was no longer called the human, but Light Mother, a title that made her blush but warmed her heart. Yet not all was ease. The Council of Elders, though respectful, watched her closely. Some whispered that a human could not understand the weight of ruling a star-spanning people. Others questioned whether her bond with the Queen was born of true connection or mere desperation. Lena heard the rumors through the rustle of courtiers' robes and the sudden silences when she entered a room. She said nothing. She simply showed up, every morning in the nursery, every afternoon in the gardens, every evening beside Vela in the strategy chamber, learning the names of distant systems and the needs of allied worlds. One day, a message arrived from the Outer Rim, a distress call from a mining colony on the ice moon of Krell. Zenthari workers had vanished. Their comms were silent. Scans showed no wreckage, no signs of battle, only an eerie stillness. The council debated for hours. Some argued it was a trap by the Dravik Syndicate, old enemies of the Alliance. Others believed it was a natural disaster, a cave-in beneath the frozen crust. Queen Vela listened, her face unreadable. Then she turned to Lena. "What do you think?" Lena hesitated. She was not a soldier or a tactician, but she had spent years studying ecosystems, reading patterns in silence. "If it were an attack," she said slowly, "there would be debris, energy spikes, signs of struggle. If it were a collapse, the life support systems would have triggered emergency beacons. The fact that there's nothing, that feels wrong." Like something took them quietly. Vela's eyes lit with recognition. Exactly. The council fell silent. They had not expected the human to speak, let alone offer insight that matched their own intelligence reports. "Then we go," Vela declared. "Not with warships, but with a scout vessel. Light and fast, and I will take Light Mother with me." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Taking a human on a mission into potential danger was unheard of. But Vela's word was law. 2 days later, they boarded the Star Dancer, a sleek vessel shaped like a crescent moon. Lena wore a fitted flight suit, her hair braided tight, her nerves coiled but steady. Kayla remained in the palace under the care of Elder Nura, who had raised 3 generations of royal children. Before leaving, Lena had kissed the baby's forehead and whispered the lullaby one last time. Kayla had smiled in her sleep, her tiny fingers brushing Lena's cheek. The journey to Krell took 6 cycles. During that time, Lena studied the colony's last transmissions, listened to the ambient scans, and walked the ship's quiet corridors with Vela. They spoke of Earth, of oceans and forests, of cities that never slept. Vela spoke of her youth, of training under the twin suns, of the loneliness of command before Lena arrived. "You make the silence bearable," Vela admitted one night. As they watched nebulae swirl outside the viewport, Lena smiled. "I think you make the noise meaningful." When they reached Krell, the moon loomed below them, a sphere of white and blue, its surface cracked with ancient glaciers. The colony dome was intact, light still glowing faintly, but no movement, no signals. The Star Dancer landed softly on the ice field a kilometer away. They descended in environmental suits, boots crunching on frozen methane. The air was thin, cold enough to freeze breath solid. Vela carried a pulse rifle. Lena carried a bioscanner and a small sonic emitter, a tool she'd modified from a garden calmer. Inside the dome, everything was in place. Cups set on tables. Tools lay on workbenches. Even the food synthesizers hummed softly. But no people. Lena knelt beside a sleeping cot. She ran her scanner over the sheets. Residual biosigns. But fading. They were taken recently, within the last 12 hours. Then she noticed something odd. Near the airlock, the floor shimmered slightly, not with ice, but with a fine silvery dust. She touched it with a gloved finger. It clung to her suit, glowing faintly. "This isn't native to Krell," she said. "It's organic. Almost like spores." Vela frowned. "Spores don't abduct miners." "Unless they're not just spores," Lena replied. She activated the sonic emitter, sending out a low-frequency pulse. The dust reacted instantly, swirling into the air like startled insects. Then, from the ventilation shafts above, a soft chittering began. They weren't alone. Shapes emerged from the shadows, tall, slender, covered in iridescent membranes that shifted color with every breath. Their limbs were jointed like spiders, their faces smooth and eyeless but sensing. They moved silently, surrounding the two women. Vela raised her rifle. "Stand back," Lena put a hand on her arm. "Wait, they're not attacking. They're watching." She lowered her emitter and changed the frequency, mimicking the harmonic pattern she used to calm the sky lilies. The creatures stilled. One tilted its head, then slowly it extended a limb toward Lena, offering a small glowing orb. Lena took it. The orb pulsed gently in her palm. Images flooded her mind, not words but feelings, fear, confusion, a deep longing for home. The miners were not dead. They had been taken to protect them. "They're guardians," Lena whispered, "not invaders. Something dangerous is coming, a cosmic storm, a rift in space." These beings sensed it. They moved the miners to safety before it hit. Vela lowered her weapon, stunned. "How do you know this?" "They showed me," Lena said. "Through the orb. They communicate through resonance, not speech." She turned to the lead creature and hummed softly. The same 5-note lullaby. The creature shivered, then bowed its head. In response, the walls of the dome shimmered, revealing a hidden passage beneath the floor. Light glowed from below. Together, Lena and Vela followed. Deep underground, in a cavern lined with living crystal, they found the miners, alive, unharmed, sleeping peacefully in cocoons of soft light. The creatures had wrapped them in protective fields, shielding them from the coming storm. Lena approached one miner, a young Zenthari woman, and placed her hand on the cocoon. She hummed again. The woman stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Light Mother," the miner whispered, recognizing her from palace broadcasts. Back on the surface, Vela contacted the palace. The miners would be retrieved once the storm passed. The Guardians, now called the Veiled Ones, agreed to share their knowledge of spatial rifts in exchange for sanctuary and mutual respect. On the return journey, Vela sat beside Lena in the observation deck. "You didn't just save lives," she said. "You built a bridge where others saw only threat." Lena looked out at the stars. "I just listened. That is the rarest gift," Vela said. "To listen when the universe screams." When they returned to Zareth, the council greeted them not with doubt but with honor. The elders bowed deeply to Lena. The people sang her name in the streets, and when she stepped into the nursery, Kayla reached for her with a joyful cry, as if she had missed her every second. That night, as the three of them sat together, Vela, Lena, and Kayla, the palace crystals sang a new song, one woven from earth lullabies and Zenthari star chants. And in that moment, Lena knew she was no longer just a botanist from a small blue world. She was a thread in the great tapestry of the stars, stitched into a future she had never imagined but now cherished with all her heart. Peace settled over Zareth like morning mist, soft and steady. Lena walked the palace gardens each dawn, her steps light, her hands brushing leaves that shimmered in response to her touch. Kayla, now walking with unsteady joy, followed close behind, her tiny fingers clutching a woven vine doll that glowed faintly in the low light. The child spoke in a mix of Zenthari chants and earth words, Mama Lena, Starflower, Sing Again, and every sound filled Lena with a quiet wonder. Queen Vela ruled with renewed strength, her decisions backed not just by tradition, but by the trust of her people. The Alliance sent emissaries not to question but to learn. They came to see how a human and a Zenthari queen had turned ash into bloom, silence into song, and always they left changed. But the universe, vast and restless, does not allow stillness for long. One evening, as the three of them shared a meal of spiced root stew and moonberries, an alert pulsed through the palace walls, a deep, resonant tone that meant emergency. Vela rose instantly, her face calm but alert. "The outer beacon," she said. "It's gone dark." Lena knew what that meant. The beacon was a sentinel station at the edge of Zenthari space, watching for drifters, pirates, or cosmic anomalies. Its silence was never good. They went to the war room, a chamber of floating maps and shifting light. Elders gathered, their expressions grim. Scans showed no explosion, no debris, only a sudden void where the station had been. And beyond it, something else. A ripple in space-time, faint but growing. "It's not natural," said Elder Nura, her voice thin with age and worry. "It feels hungry." Lena studied the data stream. The pattern reminded her of something. Something from Earth's old myths. "A void eater," she whispered. Vela turned. "What is that?" "Not a real thing," Lena said quickly. "Just a story. Sailors used to say that in the deepest oceans, there were places where the water swallowed ships whole and left no trace. They called them void eaters, but that was just fear talking." "Fear often speaks truth in disguise," Vela replied. Days passed. More beacons fell silent. Trade routes shifted. Panic simmered in the outer colonies. The council urged a blockade, a show of force, but Lena felt it wouldn't work. You cannot fight emptiness with weapons. Then Kayla fell ill. It started with restlessness. She would not sleep, her golden eyes wide with something like fear. Her skin dimmed. Her coos turned to whimpers. Healers came, scanned, chanted, but nothing helped. On the third night, she clutched Lena's hand and whispered a single word. "Gone." Lena's blood ran cold. "What's gone, little star?" the song. Kayla said, tears like liquid pearl rolling down her cheeks. "The big song." "It's quiet," Lena understood. The Zenthari believed all life was connected by a cosmic harmony, the great song. If something was devouring space, it might also be silencing that song. And Kayla, young and sensitive, could feel it fading. Vela held her daughter close, her own face pale. If the song dies, so do we. Lena made a decision that night. She would not wait for war councils or scans. She would go to the edge, to the last place the beacon stood, and listen. "You cannot go alone," Vela said. "I won't," Lena replied. "I'll take the Star Dancer. And I'll take Kayla." Vela stiffened. "She's sick. She needs rest. She needs the song," Lena said gently. "And I think she might be the only one who can hear it clearly enough to find what's wrong." After a long silence, Vela nodded. "Then we go together." They launched before dawn. The Star Dancer cut through the void, swift and silent. Kayla lay curled in Lena's lap, her breathing shallow, her small body warm but weak. Vela piloted with steady hands, her eyes fixed on the stars ahead. As they neared the edge of known space, the ship's instruments began to fail. Lights flickered. Comms died. Even the hum of the engine grew faint, as if being swallowed. Then they saw it. Not a ship, not a storm, but a tear. A perfect circle of nothingness floating in the black. Around it, stars dimmed. Light bent inward and vanished. It made no sound, yet the silence itself screamed. Kayla stirred. "There," she whispered, pointing a trembling finger. Lena activated the ship's external sensors, but they showed only static. Then she did something no Zenthari would think of. She opened the audio feed to raw space. Not for data, but for sound. At first nothing, then a hum, faint, broken like a lullaby played on a cracked bell. It was the great song, but wounded. "It's not eating space," Lena realized aloud. "It's trying to heal." Vela frowned. "What do you mean?" "Look at the edges," Lena said, pointing to the visual feed. "The distortion isn't violent. It's rhythmic, like a pulse. What if this isn't a monster? What if it's a wound in reality, and whatever's inside is trying to close it, but it's trapped?" Kayla suddenly sat up. "It's sad," she said. "It wants to sing, but can't." Lena's heart ached. She remembered the veiled ones on Krell, how they seemed threatening until she listened. Maybe this was the same. "We have to help it," she said. "How?" Vela asked. "We can't touch it. We can't even get close." Lena looked at Kayla, then at the locket around her neck, the one holding Kayla's light and Vela's hair. An idea formed, fragile but bright. "The song connects everything," she said. "So maybe we don't fight the silence. We fill it." She went to the ship's comm array and rewired it, not for transmission but for resonance. She linked it to the locket, to Kayla's biosigns, to her own voice. Then she began to hum. The old Earth lullaby, the one that had first calmed Kayla, the one that had grown moss in the ash wastes. Kayla joined in, her small voice thin but clear. Vela, after a moment, added the deep harmonic chant of the Zenthari queens, a sound said to calm dying stars. Together, their voices wove into a single thread of sound, sent not as a signal, but as a gift. The void trembled. The tear in space pulsed once, twice, then began to shrink. The broken hum from the great song grew stronger, clearer. Stars around the edge brightened. The silence lifted, replaced by a soft, rising harmony. Kayla smiled. It singing back. For hours they sang. The star dancer drifted, bathed in light that had no source. And when the tear finally closed, leaving only a single, glowing point like a newborn star, Kayla fell asleep in Lena's arms, her skin bright once more, her breathing deep and calm. On the journey home, Vela held Lena's hand. "You didn't just save a station," she said. "You healed a piece of the universe." Lena looked out at the stars, now whole again. "I just remembered that even the deepest silence can be answered with a song." When they returned to Zareth, the people did not cheer. They stood in quiet awe. They had felt the shift, the return of the great song, and they knew who had brought it back. In the weeks that followed, Kayla grew stronger, her laughter echoing through the halls like music. Lena continued her work in the gardens, but now others came to learn. Not just Zenthari, but beings from across the Alliance. They wanted to know how to listen, how to heal, how to sing when the world goes quiet. One evening, as the three of them sat on the palace balcony watching the twin moons rise, Kayla pointed to the sky. "That one's ours," she said, indicating the new star where the void had been. Vela smiled. "Yes, little star, because we sang it into being." Lena leaned against Vela, Kayla between them, and felt the steady thrum of two hearts. One triple beat, one steady human rhythm, beating in time with the great song. And in that moment, she knew that home was not a place but a harmony shared across stars, built not with power but with love, patience, and a simple lullaby that dared to answer the silence. Time flowed like a quiet river on Zareth, deep and steady. Lena no longer counted the days by Earth calendars but by the twin moons' dance and the blooming cycles of the sky lilies. Kayla was growing fast, her steps sure now, her voice bright, with questions about stars, seeds, and why the wind hummed when it passed through crystal leaves. She called Lena Mama of Songs, and Vela Mama of Light. And the two women shared their daughter with a love that needed no words. The Alliance had changed too. Emissaries no longer came with demands but with requests. How to heal poisoned worlds, how to listen to silent places, how to blend old ways with new hope. Lena taught them not with lectures but with hands in the soil, with songs in the dark, with the quiet certainty that life always seeks a way back. But even rivers meet the sea, and even peace must face its final test. It began with a dream. Kayla woke one night screaming, her small body drenched in cold sweat, her golden eyes wide with terror. She clutched Lena's robe and whispered a single phrase over and over. "The dark root is waking." Vela summoned the elders. They consulted. The memory crystals, ancient records stored in the heart of the palace. What they found chilled the air. Long ago, before the Zenthari flew among stars, their ancestors warred with a being they called the Dark Root, a force not of flesh, but of hunger. It fed on silence, on fear, on the absence of song. It had been sealed away in the core of a dead star, bound by the combined voices of 1,000 queens. But stars die, and seals weaken. "It is not a myth," Elder Nura said, her voice trembling. "The last beacon near the dead star went silent 3 nights ago, not like the Void Eater. This silence, it is empty on purpose." Lena felt a cold dread settle in her chest. This was not something that could be sung away with a lullaby. This was ancient, patient, and it knew their song. Vela made the decision before dawn. "We go to the dead star. We reinforce the seal." "With what?" Lena asked. "Our voices won't be enough. Not alone," Vela said, "but together, with Kayla, with the people, with every voice that still believes in harmony, we might hold it back." They did not travel as queen and consort. They traveled as a family. The star dancer carried them through the void, its hull humming with protective harmonics woven from palace crystals. Kayla sat between them, her small hands pressed to the viewport, her eyes fixed on the distant black where the dead star waited. As they neared, the ship grew heavy, not with gravity, but with silence. Lights dimmed, Instruments flickered. Even the air felt thin, as if the ship itself was holding its breath. Then they saw it. The dead star was not truly dead. It pulsed faintly like a dying heart. Around it, space twisted, not into a tear, but into knots, as if reality itself was being strangled. And from its surface rose tendrils of shadow, not solid, but hungry, reaching. Kayla whimpered. "It knows we're here." Lena held her close. "Then we give it something to hear." They did not land. They could not. Instead, Vela anchored the ship at a safe distance and activated the resonance array, now upgraded with crystals from every allied world. Lena linked it to Kayla's biorhythm, to her own heartbeat, to Vela's triple pulse. Then she began to sing. Not the lullaby this time. Something older. Something deeper. A song her grandmother never taught her, but that rose from her bones, as if it had always been there. A melody of roots and rivers, of earth turning, of stars being born in darkness. Kayla joined in, her voice clear and strong, weaving Zenthari star chants with human longing. Vela added the Queen's binding hymn, a sound so powerful it once held back a supernova. The ship glowed. Light poured from its hull, not as a weapon, but as a net of sound and harmony. It reached toward the dead star, wrapping around the tendrils of shadow. For a moment, it worked. The tendrils recoiled. The pulsing slowed. Then the dark root answered, not with sound, but with silence so deep it hurt. It swallowed their song, note by note. The lights on the ship died. Kayla cried out as her voice vanished mid-note. Vela gasped, clutching her throat. Lena felt it too, the song being pulled from her chest, like roots torn from soil. She fought to breathe, to remember the melody, but the silence was everywhere. In that moment of despair, Kayla did something unexpected. She stopped trying to sing. Instead, she pressed her small hand to the ship's console and began to hum. Not a tune, but a single tone, steady and pure. The tone of a heartbeat, of life simply being. And then, from across the Alliance, other voices joined. First the ash wastes, now a green haven rose in song. Then the ice moon of Krell, where the veiled ones chimed in with their resonant hum. Then colony after colony, world after world, sent their voices into the void, not as a chorus, but as a single pulse of "We are here." The dark root faltered. It had fed on silence because it believed life was fragile, temporary, alone. But now it faced a truth it could not consume. That life, when connected, becomes unbreakable. Lena found her voice again. Not loud, but certain. She sang the lullaby, the first song that had ever calmed a storm. Vela's voice returned, stronger. Kayla's hum grew into a laugh. The net of light tightened. The tendrils shrank. The dead star's pulse slowed, then stilled. The seal held. Exhausted, they drifted in the quiet aftermath. The stars around them burned brighter as if relieved. On the journey home, Kayla slept soundly, her head on Lena's lap. Vela piloted with one hand, the other holding Lena's. "You knew," Lena said softly. "You knew we couldn't do it alone." "I knew," Vela replied, "that you would remind them they were never alone." Back on Zareth, there was no feast, no celebration, only quiet gratitude. The people planted a new garden that night, not of flowers but of memory stones, each one inscribed with a voice that had sung into the dark. Weeks later, as Lena walked that garden with Kayla, the child stopped beside a small stone glowing faintly blue. She placed her hand on it and smiled. "It's still singing," she said. Lena knelt beside her. Always. That evening, as the twin moons rose, Vela joined them on the balcony. The three stood together watching the stars, not with fear but with peace. Lena knew her time was shorter than theirs. Humans aged fast. But she also knew that what they had built would last. Kayla would carry both songs, the human lullaby and the Zenthari hymn, in her heart. And through her, the harmony would continue. She leaned into Vela's warmth, Kayla's small hand in hers, and listened to the great song, whole, strong, and endless. And in that moment, She was not just a botanist from a small blue world. She was a note in the universe's oldest melody, and that was enough.